to the chat you go, Sam. Could use some more likes on the show too to help out King VC's challenge. But the question, Joe Alt's Notre Dame O-line coach connection with Titans O-line coach Bill Callahan, is that a big deal, small deal, or no deal, knowing that Bill Callahan gave Notre Dame O-line coach Joe Rudolph his first full-time college job, coaching job at Nebraska, probably around 20 years ago. So big deal, small deal, or no deal. Sam, what's the chat saying so far?
We got JQ saying no deal. Ashley saying no deal. A small deal from Steven. A small deal from Mark. No deal from Steve. No deal, says IR Hoshi. Small from Andre and Clayton and Scott and Titans Kyle. No deal from Curtis. No deal from Mario. Corey says small. Billy says small. Christopher and Ryan and Cameron say small. Matthew says it's no deal. Pistol Ramsey, our first big deal, says it's a super big deal. That's our first big deal in the chat. Small deal from Willie and Darius, tighten up, and DeMarco. David says no deal. Richie with a big deal. No deal from MB. Small deal from Danny and Kenneth and David and Katie. No deal from Astro with Eric. I think we are kind of split for the most part between no deals and small deals, a sprinkle of big deal on the side. Austin, what do you think about this? Is this a big deal, small deal, or no deal?
I think it's a big deal, but that doesn't mean the Titans are going to draft Joe Alt. It's a big deal in the fact that I went back and looked. 2007 is when Joe Rudolph got his first full-time coaching position. He was a GA, grad assistant at Ohio State the 3 seasons prior. Look, Joe Rudolph played in the NFL for a couple years as an offensive guard back in the mid-90s after being a player at Wisconsin in the early 90s, and then went back, was a GA to start his coaching career after his playing career didn't last super long. But getting the first full-time coaching job at Nebraska 17 years ago. The fact is that Bill Callahan has a comfort level with Joe Rudolph over nearly 2 full decades to lean on when it comes to finding the truth about a player. College coaches always want their players to get drafted as high as possible. So they will do anything to tell you that Isaiah Wilson, no red flags. No, it's just a little immature. No red flags. Great player, big body. Can't find him anywhere. Isaiah Wilson, enough red flags. Yeah, he's the next Georgia first-round pick. Of course, Kirby Smart and everybody that coaches for Georgia wants that to happen because that makes them look better. Now, it makes them look like assholes when it works out like the way that it did. But I think the part is if you have an actual relationship with that college coach, you're going to get the truth. Good, bad, indifferent, both, whatever it is. I think this is a big deal because Joe Rudolph, I'm sure, feels somewhat indebted to Bill Callahan for giving him his first opportunity. Because here we are 17, 18 years later, and Joe Rudolph's the offensive line coach at Notre freaking Dame. That is not a small job. And he got his beginning to that path because of Bill Callahan giving him that opportunity. So I think it's a big deal, but absolutely does not mean the Titans are drafting Joe Alt. I think it's just the fact that the Titans might have the best chance of getting the 100% truth about Joe Alt because of Joe Rudolph and Bill Callahan.
So if there is a relationship between Bill Callahan and Joe Rudolph, which we're kind of assuming, right? We're going on the assumption that they are still, have some sort of relationship, friendship, whatever, from their time at Nebraska and from that job that Bill Callahan gave him that you mentioned. If they have that relationship, it has to be a deal for me. I was close to going no deal because at the end of the day, the tape is the tape. I think the Titans have said that enough times now. What Joe Alt did at Notre Dame and how he interviewed with him, I think that will obviously hold more weight than what any offensive line coach says, than any relationship that you might have, than any connection that you might have. They are going to evaluate from an objective point of view in those areas. So it close to no deal for me.
Really?
But when I listen to the Titans speak, the Titans coaching staff speak in press conferences, this kind of thing matters to them more than I think it does to most NFL franchises and most NFL fans. I asked Nick Holtz about Sadiq Charles and where he saw Sadiq Charles fitting in with the offensive line. So I asked the Titans offensive coordinator where he felt like a offensive lineman could fit within that group. His answer was Randy Jordan, the Titans running backs coach, was familiar with him from Washington and really, gave a glowing review, really spoke highly of Sadiq. Not an offensive line coach, a running back coach who saw Sadiq Charles do some work with his running backs, kind of looking for run gaps and stuff. And obviously, the way the offensive line works coincides with how running backs succeed and how running backs work. Yeah. But that little relationship and familiarity that Randy Jordan had with that player mattered and held weight for the Titans during free agency when they were looking at guys to bring on board. It was somebody that Randy Jordan identified as, I can speak to his work ethic. I can speak to his style of play. I think there's a fit here. Bill Callahan looks at the tape. Bill Callahan signs off. All of a sudden, it's a match made in heaven. The Titans love what they get in Sadiq Charles. And I do believe that some of that can be factored in here. This is an organization that this entire coaching cycle has been all about a spider web of connections. Brian Callahan knows somebody who knows somebody, and that person's getting hired, and this person used to play with this person, and everybody seems to be kind of intertwined and connected somehow. So it would make perfect sense for the team's first round pick, for a guy like Joe Alt, that they're looking to make their franchise left tackle, to have just played for somebody that Bill Callahan knows, likes, and trusts, and have some reliable connection to him there, and a connection that other teams don't necessarily have.
Yeah. And I think and you brought up a fair question, is like, does Bill Callahan have a relationship with Joe Rudolph because they worked together in 2007 and Bill Callahan hired Joe Rudolph in 2007? And from every press conference that I've heard, everything that I've heard about Bill Callahan, going back to the actual fact that the Cleveland Browns were willing to waive a contract clause to allow Bill Callahan to take this lateral move job to be his son's offensive line coach, makes me feel like Bill Callahan's probably the type of guy who has a relationship 17 years later after hiring a guy for his first job, right? Like, I don't know Bill Callahan. I have never seen the man in person up close, right? I don't even know if you have, because I don't think he hasn't spoke, right? Like, Bill Callahan has not had a media availability to this point as a Titans assistant coach, but so nobody really knows him unless you cross paths with him previously. But that's just what the vibe and the aura that Bill Callahan is kind of perceived as is, yeah, this guy is a relationship guy. He's been around for a long time and touched a lot of different people and coaches and players. And he uses all of those to help him, even going back to what Brian Callahan said last week about, when Bill can look at a player's tape and say, yeah, this guy looks like a guy I coached in 1998, and scouting staff has like no idea who that player is because it was pre-BCS era. Well, now Bill Callahan can go to Joe Rudolph and say, hey, you've been coaching the offensive line position in college football since like 2012. How do you feel about this? You've been at Wisconsin and Pitt and Virginia Tech and now Notre Dame for a long time, like after Nebraska. How does Joe Alt compare to other prospects that you've had at those schools playing in those conferences? And you get down to the granular moment of what is Joe Alt as a prospect. We even nailed that Joe Alt is the best offensive line prospect in the last 3 or 4 drafts combined.